After the counterattack of Putin's army with the participation of DPRK soldiers in Kursk region, a 10,000-strong group of the Ukrainian Armed Forces was under threat of being cut off from Ukraine and completely cut off from supplies. The Telegraph writes about this. The publication links this to Trump's suspension of the provision of intelligence to Ukraine, which led to the rapid advance of the Russian army from two directions to the Yunakovka-Sudzha highway, which is the main logistical thread for the Ukrainian Armed Forces group. Now this road is already under fire control of the Russians, who can hit everything that moves along it not only with artillery, but also with drones. One of the Ukrainian military personnel stationed in Kursk region told the publication that the issue of withdrawing Ukrainian Armed Forces units from the territory of the Russian Federation is currently being considered in order to avoid serious losses. The enemy forces outnumber the Ukrainian forces by 6 times. The threat of encirclement is real, he said. Maps from the analytical resource DeepState show that 2/3 of the Ukrainian Armed Forces group in Kursk region may be cut off from the main forces. It is currently connected to Ukraine by a corridor 500 meters wide at its narrowest point. Elite units of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, including the 95th Airborne Assault Brigade, the 115th Mechanized Brigade, and the 8th Separate Special Forces Regiment, continue to hold the defense. Russian troops are expanding the combat zone to the villages of Novonkoi and Basovka, and there are also reports that they are taking control of Novia and Staraya Sorokitsa. Experts believe that by limiting the intelligence it provides to Ukraine, the United States is allowing the Russians to operate more freely and successfully hide their intentions when planning attacks. The Ministry of Defense of Russia says that the armed forces of the Russian Federation went to the administrative borders of Sudzha and began an assault. There are battles going on in the city. There are about 2,000 Ukrainian soldiers, many of them seriously wounded. According to Ukrainian monitoring agencies, there are about 3K enemy fighters in the area. It is claimed that separate groups of the armed forces of Ukraine began negotiations on the surrender of prisoners and the removal of the wounded in exchange for life and new types of weapons supplied by the United States and France. As the Ukrainian TG channels write, they are ready to give new types of UAVs, satellite encryption systems, a few armored vehicles. Recently the armed forces of the Russian Federation took the temporarily occupied Sudzha into an operational environment. Less than 6 kilometers remained until full.
By isolating Ukraine from vital intelligence, the US is also isolating itself, especially in space. However, this will not stop Ukraine's efforts to protect civilians from Russian missile strikes, though it may complicate them, David Axe writes in a Forbes report. On the 5th of March, reports emerged that the US President Donald Trump administration's halt of intelligence sharing with Ukraine impacted warnings about Russian drone and missile strikes against both military and civilian targets. The US intelligence sharing pause went alongside a freeze in military aid for Ukraine after the heated argument between Trump and Zelenski in the Oval Office on the 28th of February over the end of the war in Ukraine and security guarantees for the country. Trump said after the meeting that Zelensky is not ready for peace and said to come when he would be ready. Meanwhile, Russia has not made any such statements yet. At the same time, the expert emphasizes that Ukraine's European allies possess many of the same space capabilities as the US, albeit on a smaller scale. Commercial companies also provide similar services. In 2022, Ukraine leased a radar observation satellite from the Finnish company IC for $17 million. 2 years later, Germany funded the expansion of Ukraine's space surveillance capabilities through Rheinmetall and IC. Meanwhile, the Netherlands paid $13 million to the American company Maxar whose satellites regularly photograph nearly the entire Earth's surface for access to its imagery. The Netherlands shares intelligence with Ukraine under a 2024 memorandum. Ukraine also receives space-based data from Europe's major space powers, the UK, Italy and France. Poland, for its part, finances Starlink services and has reaffirmed its commitment to continue funding them despite reports of possible restrictions on Ukraine's access. Additionally, the Franco-British satellite communications company Eutelsat is currently negotiating with the European Union to provide services to Ukraine. Regarding the US self-isolation in the event of restricting intelligence data for Ukraine, the expert notes that American military and intelligence agencies do not always generate all intelligence themselves. They also benefit from data sharing, particularly through the Five Eyes alliance, which includes Australia, Canada, New Zealand and the US. However, under US President Donald Trump, this alliance could collapse. Amid escalating trade tensions with Canada and his bizarre idea of making Canada the 51st US state, Trump's advisor Peter Navarro even called for Canada's expulsion from Five Eyes, an action that would harm all members of the alliance.
The bodies of hundreds of Russian airborne troops killed in the war in Ukraine have been sent to the city of Ushuriysk in the Primorsky Krai region of Russia. The images have been shared on social media. Ushuriysk has its own atmosphere. Today, the servicemen of the 83rd Separate Guards Air Assault Brigade returned to their home harbor. Life in the body sorting room is in full swing, and the work is in full swing. Each body needs to be packed and taken to its address in Primorsky Krai, the commentary to the video reads. All of the soldiers are said to be soldiers from the 83rd Guards Airborne Assault Brigade of the Russian Armed Forces. The soldiers of this brigade are fighting on various fronts, including in the Kursk region of Russia. They are also said to have participated in the massacres that took place in the city of Bucha, Kiev region, in the early days of the war. It should be noted that this is not the first time that hundreds of bodies of soldiers have been brought to a Russian city at the same time. Russia's actual losses are almost certainly substantially higher than open-source data can reveal. Russia has lost over 850,000 troops in Ukraine since February 24, 2022, according to the latest figures by the General Staff of Ukraine's Armed Forces. While Ukraine's figures do not specify killed or wounded, the overall consensus is that it includes dead, wounded, missing, and captured. For comparison, the UK suffered 750,000 military casualties during the 6 years of World War II.
Март 25-го года. Парни, ВДВшники возвращаются домой. Это жесть.